If you want to know the secrets of existence and the true meaning of life, I can't help you. But if you want some book recommendations, why not try reading the ones I wrote? If you're a fan of giant monster mayhem and anime weirdness, why not try Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1? If horror is more your style, you can't go wrong with The Occult Mafia. Those who enjoy their fantasy with a dark twist may be interested in Emerald of Maddox City. And if you're interested in shared universes, why not read all three? Hop on down to the description for links to all 3 books on Amazon. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and episode 3 of Godzilla Singular Point focuses on something that feels incredibly familiar to me. The main conflict of this particular episode involves a swarm of Rodans, if you will, an entire flock of them coming out of the sea, trailing red mist behind them, and attacking the city. And the reason I say that feels so familiar is because I myself wrote about flocks of pterosaurs being a kaiju element in my book Operation Red Dragon, which was published in 2018 and actually completed well before then anyway. So, yeah, I don't know if Toho actually does know about this book. It's probably just a coincidence, but just for the record, I did it first. Or at least I did it before Toho did. Anyway, though, it's not exactly like what's in the book. I describe my pterosaurs as moving in sort of a murmuration, like starlings do, whereas these guys just sort of fly sort of in formation, but otherwise act individually. And also these Rodans look a bit closer to the classic Rodan. They still look like more scientifically accurate pterosaurs in terms of body structure, but they have the dual crests, they have a darker, more earthy skin tone, things like that. It feels a little bit more like the classic Rodan while still looking like an anatomically correct pteranodon. Well, interesting as it is, what else does this episode have to offer? Well, one major element is that Pero 2, the AI that was downloaded onto May's computer, apparently hijacks a different mechanical device and starts using it to move around. And I actually was thinking about this after a line in episode 2 where he says that his distinct personality is tied directly to May's computer, and if he were to be uninstalled, that particular version of him would be completely erased or perhaps somehow rearranged. That got me thinking, I wonder if he's going to be downloaded into Jet Jaguar at some point. And then episode 3 comes along and shows him hijacking this one construction robot, or whatever the robot is designed for, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely going to happen. I'm predicting that by the end, he's going to be downloaded into Jet Jaguar, and Jet Jaguar will become a fully autonomous robot. I could be wrong, but if I had to guess, if I had to put money on it, that's what would happen. But we will see. In terms of moving the plot forward, again, it's only incremental. The big takeaway is that this is the first major kaiju attack, with the Rodans all swarming the city at once. So there's not a whole lot more that happens beyond that. We learn that May is going to apparently start working with this one scientist who also experiments in some weird theoretical stuff, but we don't actually see that happen in this episode. Her entire journey in this episode is just getting to a location where she will learn that. So, not much in terms of plot progression. And we also learn that the device, which was built back in episode 2, that was designed to lure the Rodans away, technically does work. It doesn't really help in terms of defeating them, but it does lure them. So we have at least that much to go on. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot to really move the story forward. However, this episode does demonstrate something that I really think people need to be reminded of, especially in this day and age, and especially within the Godzilla franchise and the Godzilla fandom. The idea that you can have thrilling action and you can have substance. Yet again, it feels like I keep circling around to Shin and the Polygon trilogy, but I have to bring this up. When those movies came out and their critics said that they were dull and boring and took their sweet time getting to the point, which wasn't much of a point when you got right down to it, we saw a lot of counter-arguments from those film supporters, one of the chief of them being that people critiquing the movies for being slow and dull and boring just didn't appreciate more cerebral, slower-paced cinema. Our pea-sized brains just couldn't handle something that was more deliberately paced and more thought-provoking. Well, gee, guys, it looks like you caught me. I'm dead to rights on this one. All this time I thought I liked movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey and Casablanca and the original Universal monster movies, but it turns out I don't because I'm too stupid to handle that sort of thing. These movies are slow and not very action-packed and heavier on theme, so how could I possibly like them? Except, of course, that I do like them, and people making this argument are speaking from an orifice which is not the mouth. You see, the problem with the Polygon Trilogy and Shin isn't that they're slow and heavier on theme. It's that their slowness doesn't actually get us anywhere, and the themes are not very strong, especially in the Polygon Trilogy. Shin, it's all politics. We can have a debate about how that applies and why it might not translate outside of Japan, but the Polygon Trilogy, it was just repeating stuff that it thought sounded intelligent in the hopes that it would sound intelligent itself. And ultimately, it didn't really fool that many people. But with Singular Point, we see something else happen. We see a lot of stuff that sounds really intelligent, though I'm pretty sure a lot of it is just technobabble like you would hear in Star Trek, just fancy ways of saying, this is weird. But at the same time, we get that stuff as well as stuff that actually happens. That's the thing. The debate regarding the Polygon Trilogy and Shin seemed to get a lot of people thinking that you can have thrilling action or you can have deep themes and never the twain shall meet. But that's never been the case. You can have both of those things at once, and Singular Point is demonstrating that. There's a lot of stuff where they have to take a little more time to explain the science or the made-up science behind everything that's happening, but there's still something there to keep our interest and make it feel like we're not just checking our watches, waiting for something to happen other than people just talking on and on and on about stuff that only sounds smart but really doesn't have anything beneath it. So when I look at Singular Point and I see something that has those high concept ideas in it and has something that's a bit more thematic, the themes are still very subtle at this point, but I know they're building to something. And we have that in conjunction with stuff that's actually interesting to look at. I think, why couldn't they have done this from the beginning? Why couldn't they have done that with the big budget movies that were produced? I mean, Shin had one of the biggest budgets of any Japanese produced Godzilla movie, and the best they could do was have a Godzilla that just sort of wobbled around as it went forward and didn't really look like it was even focused on anything and didn't even look alive. And then the Polygon Trilogy doubled down on that and made the Godzilla in that film even slower and even less aware of his surroundings. Here, though, we've got monsters that feel like living things that actually do stuff. We have interesting sequences of action, but we also have interesting sequences of dialogue, interesting sequences discussing scientific concepts, interesting stuff where we see people coming up with solutions. There's that whole extended sequence where the characters are trapped by the Rodans, and Yun starts using his phone to try and figure out this thing with a bottle. There's technically nothing happening in that sequence. It's just a moment where it stops so he can talk to his phone and do all of these calculations about stuff that even the other characters around him that might even know him don't know what he's doing. But then we get the solution and we see, oh, there was a practical application after all, and we see that applied, and it actually leads into something. That's the way it's done. That's the way it should have always been done. Why they didn't do it before, I have no idea, but apparently somebody learned something from the Polygon Trilogy and used it in Singular Point, and thank God for that. But otherwise, I mean, what else is there to say? I guess we do get a little more insight into May's character in that even though she spends pretty much the whole episode sitting on a train, not involved in the action at all, her response to when the Rodan start attacking actually says a lot about her, because her first thought is, darn it, I left my laundry out. We need to find some way to check and see if it's okay. That's her main concern. Whether or not her apartment has been hit and whether or not her laundry is okay. I mean, that kind of speaks to her having sort of an odd set of priorities. Again, as someone who is very laser focused on something complex and scientific, and who has a brilliant mind to actually figure that stuff out, might be inclined to lean towards. Other than that, though, yet again, this is an episode that only moves the plot forward so much. There's a big leap, of course, at the end where Godzilla, Aquatilus, appears, and that's promising that he's apparently going to play a more active role, hopefully soon, and it had better be soon too, because Godzilla's name is in the title. If he doesn't show up until almost the end, then why'd you even bother calling it after him? But they made that promise at the end of this episode. Now we wait to see how long it takes for them to deliver. Things are still moving forward, but only so far. And we will see what happens when Godzilla Aquatilus makes his big debut. Whether it's in episode 4 or some episode after that. That's all I can say just based on a first impression, so I'll wrap it up here. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.
If you enjoyed what you just saw, hop on down to the description for links to Patreon, DeviantArt, and all of our social media, as well as links for Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, and Emerald of Maddox City, 3 original novels I think you'll really enjoy. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.